Assalamu alaikum students, this is Shahbaz Khan and back again with another lesson this time, and again following the same grammar series, and today we are going to talk about its lecture number 3. So without further ado, let us get started. So starting the time once again with the name of Almighty Allah, who is the most beneficent and the most merciful. So that's the third lecture of grammar series, and I'm back here again with it. So today my topic is types of sentences as promised, and the last time we talked about the topic was sentences. We knew that sentences are called or can be learned in two ways. The first of which would be to be a word-based unit, and at the same time to be that punctuational unit. Both are actually combined and create a they are joined together to create a sentence. Now today is the time to talk about its certain amount of types. So before we get started, one thing is there for sure that we need to understand. People in our society and globally, in fact, everywhere, they have multiple types of sentences. Keep one thing in mind, and let me make this thing perfectly clear, that there are only a certain amount of types of sentences found in English grammar. They are no more than 5. They are always 5 sentences. People in our society talk about 10 sentences, 15 sentences. If they talk about more than 5 sentences, they are certainly making you become fool right now, I would say, and you just don't trust them when it comes to professional speaking, and when it comes to the original amount of types. So there are always 5 types that I have repeated right now. So no more than that. Let us talk about it. So as you can see, there are 5 types of sentences only found in English grammar or in any language. The first to be is assertive. Now the way to pronounce is not assertive, that is assertive. The second is interrogative. That's where in our society normally people are actually always pronouncing this as interrogative or interrogative. It's like, so that's not the case really. That's interrogative, the way which must be pronounced like. So when that's an adjective. When we take out the verb out of it, then we can say interrogate. But when we write this down as its adjective, then in shape of adjective, then it must be pronounced as interrogative. So the first is assertive and the second is interrogative. The third is imperative. The fourth is exclamatory. And yes, the last but not the least, and I repeat, last but not the least, is optative. So these are the 5 general and professional types of sentences. Now one thing must be kept in mind before we get started. We talk about sometimes affirmative sentence or positive sentence and declarative sentence. There are so many confusions bound to be. We'll talk about that later. But what I'm trying to say is that there are 2 aspects of every type of sentence, and they are positive as well as negative. So here to show you both ways in shape of positive and negative, I just don't want you to make it categorized only for assertive. Like what is the common trend going around is that assertive actually is somehow called only affirmative. That's one culture that we find in a society, and the other school of thought says that assertive has affirmative and negative. That school of thought is correct, but what I'm trying to tell you right now is that there are 5 types of sentences, as you can see on the screen right now before you, but there are 2 aspects of every type, like positive and negative. So positive and negative both are not only found in assertive but are found in the rest of the types as well. They are found in interrogative, they are found in imperative, they are found in exclamatory, and they are finally found in optative. So this must be kept in view before we get started. So this is the first concept that you must keep in mind. You can pause this up, or you can take the snapshot or something, or you can get a retake by scrolling back to review what I have just said. So here we go to move on. Let us start with the first sentence, that is assertive sentences. Now, generally assertive sentences are statements. Statements obviously may be positive as well as negative. So let us talk about its working structure here. How really assertives are made? They are categorically made right from subject, then to verb, and then it ends at object. Not to forget that full stop right at the end that you can see. So these are the three elements that we have in the structure of assertive sentences. Now, if I explore this further, then I have verb here, as you can see. Verb has a tendency to be broken into two parts in most of the sentences, not in all sentences, I must say. Like verb is treated first as helping verbs, or in other words called auxiliaries, and the second it gets treated as the main verb, where we change different or use different forms. So in a single sentence we have a verb, but that verb is broken into two different portions. So the first must be a helping verb and the second is verb. If that goes this way, then our sentence within assertive becomes our positive statement. So that's a positive statement of assertive. And have a good look at the screen right now, on the screen right now. If the sentence remains same and if we use right after helping verb, as you can see, right after helping verb, not. If we add or attach not right after helping verb, if the sentence remains same and the beginning and the ending remains same, then this whole sentence now is still assertive, despite we have added not into it right after helping verb. But despite having used not here, this whole sentence is still assertive and it's negative right now. So that is negative in assertive, as you can see, by the addition of not. So it's a statement. A statement can be positive as well as negative. Now, not to forget the key. The key is to add full stop right at the end. Some people tend to forget this. So let's take an example. For example, we are learning an English lesson. This is an English lesson that you are learning, mashallah, and this is where we can divide things up. Like we is the subject, are is the first part of verb, which is helping verb. Learning is the present participle form, which is the fourth form in other words, and that's the main verb of the verb. An English lesson, these three section words join together to form a single object. So this is assertive sentence for you right now. Moving on to the second one. Now let us talk about interrogative sentences. It talks about queries, inquiries, as well as questions. When we inquire something, when we ask something, we talk about interrogative. Now let us take a look at its structure. Now the same type of elements, like we have subject, we have verb, and we have object, but we do have a question mark right at the end, as you can see. So what am I missing really? Let's find out. Let's break verb again. Now that verb, as was in the first preceding slide, as you can see, verb was first broken into helping verb. So nothing is different right here. So it's broken into helping verb, but that helping verb gets placed before the subject, or in other words we can say we place helping verb in the place of subject, and we place subject in the place of helping verb. So that helping verb comes in the beginning, and then we have subject, and then we have the actual place of verb, which is by this time around is left up to be only called the main verb, and then comes the object, and then comes the question mark. So that is rather simple. We have a flip-flop this way in the beginning of subject and the helping verb, and then the trick's done. So that's your interrogative sentence. Now if we take the statement the same way, if we make it written the same way without adding any negativity into it, so that becomes our positive question within interrogative. Strange, very hard to understand, but soon you're going to know, and you're going to practice things this way, I believe. So if that remains the same, then that is the positive within interrogative. And the same way, if we add not right after subject, and if the structure remains as same as that, then the whole structure changes to be our negative within interrogative. And guess what? In other words, the same structure in our society is also called negative interrogative. And I beg your pardon, as you may have heard that around in the society, people tend to call it intro-negative. There is no such term as intro and negative. So there is always a correct term, which is negative interrogative, as you can see on the screen right now. So this is how we make positive and both positive and negative statements or questions of interrogative sentences. So that's the structure before you. And the key to understand is to have the question mark right at the end of the sentence. Now, let's take an example. The question comes on the screen before you. Are we learning an English lesson? Yes, we are learning right now. So, like the flip-flop that I have talked about, I have just flipped two things. We in the place of are and are in the place of we. So by flipping flop, as you can see, helping verb comes in the beginning, subject goes right after helping verb, and then we have the main verb in shape of learning, and then we have the same object, and ending at that with the question mark right at the end gives us the positive interrogative statement or question, as you can see. So that's a question before you, using not right after we makes it negative or making it negative interrogative. So that's the second type of sentence. Let us talk about the third type of sentence, and now be really stuck to the screen right now. Imperative here actually means some types of sentences that display commands, that display requests, tears, beggings, advices, alongside forbiddances. So these are like the natures we find when it comes to imperative sentences. We'll discuss that in more detail when it comes to a separate lecture of imperative. I'm going to give it to you later in future. But as far as today is concerned, I can only tell that imperative is that type of a statement or that type of sentence that doesn't really contain any subject in the beginning. For example, let us look at its structure right on the screen. So the structure has only two things, the verb and the object. So the sentence of imperative actually begins from verb. There's no subject, as you can see, there's nowhere to be found. So that verb is once again categorically only to be the first form, the present form. So the structure gets completed right before you. Once we have the first form of verb in the beginning, and then we follow it out with an object, then the trick's done. That's our imperative sentence. And if the sentence remains the same way, obviously that's our positive imperative within imperative sentence. So and now when it comes to its negative, we use do and not, the identical acknowledging negatives of any commands, any requests, any advices, or any type of forbiddances. Like as you can see, do not, and when you add this, that whole sentence changes to be and become negative within imperative sentence. So that becomes the negative of the positive statement of imperative. Now, the key is to understand is there is only one helping verb. There's only one helping verb that is in shape of do. We find when it comes to imperative sentences. So imperative sentences only have one helping verb, that is do, and they only have one main verb that is in shape of always first form. So there's no other change. We can't simply say that we can use second form or third or fourth form. Things like that really don't go in imperative sentences. That's a different topic in itself altogether. So in that case, that first form is the only main verb, and that usage of do is the only helping verb we find when it comes to imperative sentences. So this is how we make positive and negative of it. And the key once again is to understand to have full stop right at the end. For example, let's look at an example of it. Do not forget this English lesson, please. I'm begging you right now. So that do not is an addition as in shape of negative. So that's negative imperative that I'm displaying. But iconically I've added the word please as an indication that if I remove please as is in this sentence, then it becomes a kind of a command, a negative command. But once I have added please or kindly right at the end, or maybe in the very beginning, things can become requests at the same time. So there may be more examples to follow, but hope this clarifies here. And let's get down to the fourth statement or sentence. This is exclamatory sentence. The one thing that comes into your mind, what makes it exclamatory? are the exclamations, or in other words are called expressions. They are such sentences which which bear emotions or strong feelings, like in shape of joy or happiness or sorrow or sadness or grief, as well as surprise or wonder. So let's talk about it. Let's take a look at its structure on the screen. The same conceptual structure as is an assertive: subject, verb and object. If that remains the same, that it is assertive. But the same verb, keeping in mind carrying the same helping verb, the division of it in shape of the main verb after helping verb, it all looks same as is in assertive. So this time it is assertive as it appears to be. But once we have added exclamation, which can in other words be called expressions. What type of expressions? Say, for example, as you can see on the screen, oh, alas, hooray, and etc. Many more like that. Whoa, oh yeah, and many more like that. So these are the exclamations or expressions. Once we add them along with mark of exclamation, and I repeat, along with mark of exclamation, and the rest of the structure remains the same, then this particular structure becomes your exclamatory, and in its positive case. So that's a positive exclamatory sentence. Now take a look at it once again. The same way, if we attach not right after helping verb, the whole structure, keeping in mind the every aspect that it has carried, in the beginning exclamation and then comes exclamatory mark or mark exclamation. Now with not, it becomes your negative within exclamatory sentence. So again we find positive as well as negative in a single sentence. The key here, however, is to notice for the very first time is the use of mark of exclamation. Every such sentences which carry mark of exclamations are duly considered to be exclamatory sentences, and there are more examples. We follow it in a separate lecture. But that mark of exclamation comes either before or right at the end. If it comes right at the end, there is no need for full stop. But if it comes right before, then we do have to attach that or end that at full stop, as we have always done in assertives as well, or in statements. So that's your exclamatory sentence. Let's take a look at it in an example. Wow. Now, keeping in mind that expression wow, and alongside its a mark of exclamation right after that, followed by, if we leave the two things, then what are we left with? We are learning this English lesson very nicely. The same statement that we do have in assertive sentence. So the rest of the things are have belong to assertive once again, and the beginning shows you in addition that it has become your exclamatory sentence. Hope this gets clarified. Moving down to the last section, optative. Now, optative is a type of a sentence that structurally sometimes looks like the type of interrogative, but that's not interrogative to say the truth. These are the expressions which talk about prayers, wishes, and curses. For example, let's talk about its structure on the screen. The same structure again as is in case of assertive as well as exclamatory: subject, verb and object. And once again, we do have a certain word that is for prayers and for curses, which we mark prayers or curses like, the way we use. And in the beginning we have may. So that may is like the helping verb. It is the helping verb, but that's the only permanent helping verb we have for optative. And we flip-flop the same way when we use it for prayers as well as for curses. But that doesn't make it become our question. So the structure starts from may and goes to subject, and then we have the main verb all the way, the verb as the main verb in its place, and then we have object. And the keys to understand is to have full stop right at the end, not to forget. So full stop normally is that thing that gets confused with the mark of exclamation for optative. Generally we don't use mark of exclamation in optatives. So full stop must be used at the end, I beg your pardon. So if the structure remains the same way it appears, then it becomes a positive structure of optative. Here positive is for prayers. So like may you live long. So that's a positive prayers. Keep one thing in mind. If we attach not, and if we add not to a sentence, like I've said, may you live long, may you not live long. So that doesn't look like prayers anymore, but that does become the same way our negative. And once we have the negative of a positive prayer, that itself becomes curses. How simple and how unique. We have prayers always positive, be it in a shape of positive way or in a shape of even by writing negative. For example, may you not fall from the stairs. So even if we have added not, that doesn't make prayers go negative. The negative becomes when we change the positive prayers into negative. So the negative prayers are normally become they normally become curses. So curses are negative when they are used for prayers, but curses do appear to be positive themselves. For example, if we curse somebody, may you fall from the stairs, or may the curse befall on you. So that doesn't contain any not in it, but still that is your positive curse, positively written only, but the sense is always negative. So one thing that we must keep in mind is that prayers are always positive, be it written positively or in a negative order. But it is curses that are the negatives of prayers, as well as they are themselves written positively without even the usage of or adding, without even adding not into it. So let's or before looking at an example, we are or first of all look at the example we have. May we learn this English lesson completely. I hope may we learn this lesson quite completely. So now that's the positive prayer. And if I get to add not right after we, then the sentence becomes, may we not learn this English lesson completely. So that is no more a prayer, that becomes curse. So the thing is to notice that prayers are always positive, but they are written both positively. That's only written positively. But when it is written negatively, that becomes our curses. But yes, curse itself can be written positively when by nature it remains still negative. Um, that leaves us with one thing, as you can see right in the beginning, that is wishes. And yes, we will talk about it in a separate lecture because that's a detailed thing. And when we talk about optative sentences in a separate lecture later ahead in future. So I hope these are the types of sentences, the five of them, I repeat only five: assertive, interrogative, imperative, exclamatory, and optative. These are only five. There are five fingers and there are only five types of sentences. So I hope these are clarified here. So until next time, we'll meet next time inshallah. Until next time, it's goodbye.